each of you first discover the other? Aaron, maybe you go first.
Yeah, I discovered Jeremy first in Lincoln, and then, of course, in The Big Short. And he knocked me out in The Big Short, and agreed to be in Molly's Game, where he knocked me out again. But with Succession, and with each of those roles, it turned out like I was wrong about his range, that his strike zone was much larger than I thought it was. And then with Succession, I thought, his range may be damn near limitless. So that's how I discovered Jeremy. That's why I wanted him so badly to play Jerry in this film.
Oh, Jesus Christ, how did you do that?
Experience.
Right over here. Over here.
You don't know what to do with the egg now, do you?
No.
Everybody talks about Jeremy Strong. Every day you have a conversation with somebody about Jeremy Strong. And the person I hear him compared to the most by casting directors, by producers, is Dustin Hoffman. And I agree. And so, Jeremy, I already know what the rest of your career is going to look like. It's very good.
Jeremy, how did you first discover Aaron Sorkin?
Well, Aaron, thank you.
Sure.
I discovered him along with every other sentient being, on the planet, as just one of the greatest dramatists of this time and really of any time. I had read this script actually I have a copy, a dog-eared copy of John Schultz's book, The Chicago Conspiracy Trial, which I lent to Rylance when we started working, but he said, wow, the date on this is, I think, from 2012 or 2013. And I think I had first read the script then, when, I didn't know Aaron and I wasn't in a place in my career. I think I would have happily played a bailiff. I was just so thunderstruck by the script. It landed on me like an ocean. And then when I got the call to meet Aaron for Molly's Game, the character in Molly's Game, Dean Keith, who was a sort of LA kind of hustler, certain kind of guy. And in the book, it illustrates the way he drives his car, and he drives his car like a real asshole. And so I had a meeting with Aaron in front of the Four Seasons, and he was going to meet me at a certain time out in front of the Four Seasons on Doheny. And so I borrowed a really fast car from a friend who I was staying with in Malibu. And I timed it out. I was waiting, on Doheny, and at like 9:58, I peeled into the driveway as fast as I could, opened the door, and then threw my keys without looking to the attendant, and then sort of glanced to see if Aaron had witnessed the moment, because I thought, here's the character, and he wasn't there. But then he offered me the role, and I was just beyond my wildest imaginings. I would get to be in his canon, and so it's just been such a joy to get to work with him, and it's also been one of the great privileges of my life.
Well, you've been described as a method actor, and I know you were an assistant to Daniel Day-Lewis. What was that like on Jack and Rose, which is actually a wonderful movie?
It is a beautiful movie. Rebecca Miller made a beautiful movie, and I love Daniel's work in that movie. What was that like? You can imagine. I think every actor, it's hard to overstate the impact that Daniel's work has had on most of us. And I think there was a lot for me to take away and just observe. And mainly the lesson is just about commitment and courageousness. And so ultimately, I think everyone is on your own, kind of in the dark with your own process, and you have to figure out the way you work. So there isn't really an osmosis, magic beans that one gets by watching another actor work. But it certainly had a great impact on me, and I think about it all the time in terms of going further out on whatever limb you might be going out on, and really committing to that.
Okay, so Aaron, you're a writer who expects your actors to follow every comma and pause because you figured it out. You have paced the room with Jerry Rubin, and you know exactly how you want him to deliver a line. But you have an actor who, as I understand it, is something of a disruptor on set. How did that play out during this movie?
Well, a disruptor in a very positive, helpful way.
I meant no disrespect to the court. I'm trying to be clear that I can't muddy Mr. Seal's grounds for appeal by appearing to speak as his lawyer.
I don't ask you to compromise Mr. Seal's position, sir, but I will not permit him to address the jury when his perfectly competent lawyer is
For
sitting...
the fourth time, he's not Bobby's lawyer.
As far as the language goes, it's not about being precious about the language. It's that what the words sound like is as important to me as what they mean, and there's a precision to it. And I have a lot of respect for writers and directors who are able to carve out a space for very talented improvisers to improvise, and they want the sound of that messiness, and they want the stuff that good improvisers can give them when they're improvising. I really have a lot of respect for it, and I enjoy it as an audience member, but it's just not the way I write. If someone started ad-libbing in the middle of a scene, it would just sound like a different film or a different play or a different episode of television. As far as the disrupting went, it was a great struggle that I think produced good results, because Jeremy and Sasha playing Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman, the characters that they were playing, their role was to make sure every single day that the judge understood that these two guys had no respect for the trial that was going on. However, in doing a courtroom drama, it can't appear as if one side doesn't care if they win or lose. So it was it was a back and forth with Jeremy, and like I said, with Sasha, over just how much circus would be in the courtroom. And they would come in and, they would want to rattle Frank Langella. So just from time to time, you'd hear me say something like, I cut, that was great. Let's just try it again without the kazoo this time, Jeremy. It would be like that.
Jeremy, what did you do? What was your sense of why your Yippie had to be such a Yippie?
Well, first, I will say, I never got the sense that anything crossed a line into whatever tension ever existed on the set was a creative and healthy tension, and I think conducive to the work. I feel a sort of artistic imperative to serve the characters' needs and the forces that sort of motivate Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman as the leaders of the Yippies. They were anarchic, they were merry pranksters, they were disruptors, and they wanted to expose this mockery of justice through, I think, through sort of guerrilla theater tactics and through humor and through dissent. And so I think, your task is to embody that and to really bring that alive within within the parameters of the writing. And I come from the theater, so when you do a Pinter play, or when you do a Shakespeare play, or a Mamet play, or a Miller play, or an August Wilson play, you are welded to the text, and the text is sacrosanct. And similarly with Aaron. I mean, I don't think I would feel that way if I didn't think the text was basically perfect. But it has both its own, it's like the discus thrower. It's a complete whole. And the pentameter of the language and the music of the language. So all of that is there to serve you. And at the same time, I think the medium of film, unlike theater, demands a certain kind of. I read this book recently. It's going to get a bit heady, but it will make sense to you. This great Norwegian writer, Carl Knausgaard, was writing about painting, and I think it's true of acting as well. He said that painting, acting, cannot merely reconstruct a moment. It must itself be a moment. It must not exist beforehand, but come into being in the moment it is expressed. And so it's this tightrope of making sure that something comes into being in the very moment it is expressed with an already precisely written and prescribed track that you're on. And so I think marrying that kind of freedom and wildness is really the challenge. And it's a greater challenge because of the tightrope you're walking on with Aaron versus, when I work on the Succession, it's quite inherently messy, and it is not as precise a score. So I love the challenge of it, and certainly I felt that you have to be the sort of ambassador and bodyguard for your character. And Jerry, who had tried to levitate the Pentagon with Abby, and who went in front of the House American Activities Committee dressed as Santa Claus and an American Revolutionary soldier. I thought, if I'm not being held in contempt of movie court, then I'm not doing my job.
So, Aaron, did you have to contain him a bit? I mean, if he wants to get thrown down by a cop or gassed with tear gas,
Well, look,
did you have to protect your actor?
Just a little bit. I didn't want to contain him too much because you want him to be able to have the process that has allowed him to give the kind of performances that made you want to cast him in the first place. I don't want Jeremy to stop being Jeremy. Would I allow him to be sprayed with real tear gas? No. However, he did befriend, it was mostly off-duty Chicago police officers who were playing the Chicago police officers. And in fact, many of them were themselves the sons of Chicago police officers who had been there in 1968. Jeremy befriended a few of these guys who agreed to, this was all done way behind my back. Anytime Jeremy was going to do a shot where there was a conflict with the police, any of the two riot segments, the march on the police headquarters, he found these two cooperative Chicago police officers who he asked to really rough him up, pick him up, throw him down on the ground, really rough him up. So he didn't get hurt, and he gave a phenomenal performance. So who am I to argue?
All right, so let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
No, just to say that, Aaron, there's this sort of myth that it's all about the commas and the punctuation, and that's really just not true. I think what Aaron does is create a container that empowers his actors with the expectation that they're going to serve the material fully, but that empowers them to take chances and lets them take risks and do their thing. So I never felt stifled by Aaron, and in fact I felt very empowered and trusted by Aaron, which is all you can hope for from a director. And as far as that stuff, I think we had watched a lot of. We were there. We were on Michigan and Balbo. We were at Logan Park at the Logan statue where these events had really happened. We had all watched sort of voluminous amounts of footage of these real riots in August 1968. We had seen Haskell Wexler's Medium Cool, where you're really right in the melee. And so to I think you can't, as the actor, shortchange what these people went through. And I guess that's what that's about, is trying not to, I personally feel like if I were wearing my anorak and sort of comfortably sitting in a director's chair and sipping Evian and then start pretending, then you're not, that's not it. So I think it's just about committing to the circumstances and trying to understand it viscerally within limits.
So, Aaron, you created a courtroom scene. I spoke to Frank Langella, who, by the way, is just the most fun person. I had such a great time with him. I understand he regaled all of you on the set because you did the courtroom scene over a long period of time and you were all there doing it. Explain why you did it that way and how much that effect. Aaron, you had to say all these actors are going to be here every single day and all these extras, why you needed that.
So, Mr. Stahl, in any of these meetings, did any of the defendants say that if you didn't grant them permits, that they would do violent acts to the city?
Yes, they said the parks permit should be issued in order to minimize destruction.
Did they indicate from whom this destruction would come?
The destruction did not come from the Chicago Police Department, if that's what you're suggesting.
No further questions.
First of all, let me just give props to Shane Valentino, our production designer, who built that courtroom. There was no existing courtroom that I liked, and the actual courtroom that it took place in was unimpressive. It was a post-war small room, kind of looked like a city council meeting room, and I wanted this cavernous place where you could feel the weight of the government coming down, where the sound would echo. And if we're saying the whole world is watching, it should feel like that. There should be 120 people in the gallery and press and everything. So Shane Valentino built that for us. I remember my first meeting with Frank Langella. I was terrified. This is an actor I've looked up to since I was little and saw him in Dracula. Just owned the stage in Dracula and then in so many plays after that. And I was assuming he'd be a scary guy. He's not. He's the sweetest man in the world, loves telling stories. He gave me a copy of a book of his that was about to come out, a memoir, where he essentially takes you through every woman he has ever carried a torch for, beginning with Marilyn Monroe.
Mr. Rubin, Mr. Hoffman, what are you wearing?
It's an homage to you, Your Honor.
Do you have clothes underneath there?
Yes. Hold on. Yes.
Take off the robes, please. Silence!
At that first meeting, he said, "Now, listen, I want to ask you something, if it's okay with you. I'd like to not come to the table read. I would like to not socialize with the other actors at craft service or during lunch or between takes. When you call us to the set, I'd like to come in a different door or a minute later." And the reason why he did not want Jeremy, the rest of them, to see him in any other context than the judge walking into the room. Any other context, then their obstacle, their problem. I remember him emailing me the night before his first day of shooting. He said, I would really like to splash a lot of bay rum on. I want them to smell me coming. And by the end of the first day of shooting, he called me over. He said, listen, everything I said, forget it. It seems like they're having a really good time over there. I'd like to go. So that was that.
Yeah. So well,
I made it my mission to antagonize him, if I'm honest.
Jeremy did.
I would read passages from said memoir out loud in a sort of really and planted a remote control fart machine in the judge's dais.
All true.
And he got really mad, right? When you did
yeah,
that.
but it's a great take.
It is a great take. And when I told Jeremy and the others what Frank had said to me, when I said, hey, listen, Frank's asked me, is it okay? He's not going to hang out with you guys. He's not being a jerk. This is the reason. Oh boy, that was just a thick steak for Jeremy. Jeremy's like, okay, it's on.
It's like, I love Francis Bacon, and Francis Bacon said that all art is a game, and the thing is to deepen the game. And I guess that's what I feel like. It's just every piece of writing has its own rules, and that's the game, and the dynamics are part of the game. And it is all an illusion, but you sort of I think there's a real, if you buy into it, it yields a lot creatively.
But you had this whole group of actors, and they're these are mighty actors. These are they're not chicken liver. They're big.
They are mighty actors,
and they had to. I feel like there was a kind of healthy competitive spirit going on there.
The things that I was worried about beforehand, it turned out I didn't have to worry about at all. For instance, I was worried about the fact that this is a group of actors who are used to starring in their own things. Jeremy is part of an ensemble on Succession, but every scene that Jeremy's in is Jeremy's big scene. And it turned out that, and in this courtroom, there were going to be days at a time when what I needed them for was coverage, where it was someone else's big scene. First of all, they understood that these courtroom scenes were going to live in the coverage, and so that the coverage was important. But mostly, they were just incredibly generous with the other actors, and they wanted to be there for the other guy's big scene. And they were there for the movie, and that's I owe them an unrepayable debt for that attitude. Now, nonetheless, Steven Spielberg came to visit the set one day, and so there was a day when I was directing several of the greatest actors in the world, while Spielberg stood behind me. And I just thought that, well, just to hell with this. There's no right thing to do here. There's no way you're going to impress Steven Spielberg. Just get the scene done.
Well, he handed you the reins after many years, and man, you ran with it. You
I appreciate
really did.
that. Thanks. He was extremely supportive and helpful along the way.
In terms of the courtroom too, I will say, one of the things I did when I was younger was spend a few months training with the Steppenwolf Theater Company in Chicago, and the idea of a great ensemble is always something that an actor dreams about. The sort of like 1984 Olympic dream team kind of ensemble, and it's rare these days. And so this cast that Aaron and Francine put together, it was a marvel to just sit there and bear witness to everyone doing their work, and it was a real joy.
But there was an early press conference that I happened to watch where Aaron, you kind of suggested that Jeremy kept stealing scenes, and I have to say, there's this one thing I love in the movie where you just are expressing silently how strongly you feel about this beautiful woman who deceived you, the woman undercover, and I wondered how much of that was actually scripted.
Well, first, before Jeremy answers, let me just say I don't recall saying anything about Jeremy stealing scenes. If I did, I'm sure I meant it in the most positive way, which is
Yes,
that
of course.
you can't take your eyes off Jeremy when he's in the frame. Now, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead and talk about Daphne O'Connor.
No, I would say it is in the writing, subtextually. It's there.
Hey, did you mean this for me?
I did.
Nobody's ever sent me a drink before.
How do you like it so far?
It's a Tom Collins. I know it's kind of a country club drink, but they're delicious. A man in England named Tom Collins claimed in 1894 to have invented it, but then another man whose name I've forgotten said no, he'd invented it 2 years earlier, and I think there was a lawsuit.
That's a surprising amount of controversy for gin and lemonade.
And it's a different discipline, film and television and the theater. But this idea of sort of coverage, even, I guess I felt like when you're in the courtroom, you're in the courtroom. When you're on stage with a bunch of other actors, there's no camera on a certain individual at any given time. You're just following the unbroken line of life from beginning to end. And so it did feel like a play in that sense, where whether there's a camera on you or not, the connective tissue is very alive, and those sort of guitar strings holding everyone and everything together needed to be sustained, and there is a lot of invisible life happening. Certainly, there's a very clear point of view to every moment, and whether it's verbalized or not, there's so much going on beneath the surface for all of these people. And so that was something that, Aaron and Faden did a great job sort of just capturing those moments of sort of unexpressed moments that convey something.
I know the moment or moments you're talking about, though, Anne. There's a shot of Jeremy. I stay there for longer than a moment when Caitlin Fitzgerald, Daphne O'Connor, the undercover FBI agent, takes the stand, and it's just pain. He's just radiating pain. You can sort of see the lines coming off of him, and then in a scene later on with Joe Levitt and Sasha, when he's complaining about the ethics of sending this woman for him to fall in love with, but plainly still has a crush on her, even though she's helping to put him in jail.
Yes.
It's okay with him. Everybody's doing their job. Does she ever talk about me?
All right. On a more serious note, you felt very strongly about having this film come out before the election, and the combination of the election and the pandemic and everything that we've been going through has sort of changed every movie that we see differently. We don't see it the same way as we would have otherwise. And I just wondered how you felt about that. It's an odd thing that something you create 10 years ago, when it finally reaches the screen, could have enormous impact in a way that you didn't even intend.
Look, when I started this way back when, at first it was just an opportunity to work with Stephen, an opportunity any writer would grab at. Then it was, once I started learning about the Chicago 7, it was just a really good story to tell. We never imagined, even last winter when we were making the film, we thought it was plenty relevant then, right? Trump was getting up at rallies, and there'd be a protester, and he'd say, in the old days, they used to take that guy out of here on a stretcher. I'd like to punch him right in the face and beat the crap out of him. There was dissent was demonized. We didn't need it or want it to get more relevant, but obviously it did in May when George Floyd was killed and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and protests in cities across the country, Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, where protesters were being met again by nightsticks and tear gas, and it was 1968 all over again. It was important to me, to the producers, to Paramount, who was very generous in selling it to Netflix and not insisting on waiting a year. It was important to all of us that the film be released before the election, not because we thought we might have an impact on the election, but right now is when we're talking about these things and feeling these things. And I think the film's going to have a fine shelf life. I think it's going to be, you're going to feel just the same watching it 5 years from now as you do now. But it would have been a crime not to release it right now when we did.
Do you guys feel like Hollywood and all the agitprop material, all the different artistic endeavors that have gone out, ahead of the election around this time, did it have an impact? I feel like it did. I really do, but I wondered how you felt.
I'd like to think this film had an impact. I mean, I know, I have sisters-in-law who are in college, and Aaron and I did a conversation together with the film festival at Brown, and I know that those students were floored and galvanized by this film, and that it was a sort of lightning rod for thought and for a sort of getting out there and activism and getting out onto the front lines, the way that these characters were on the front lines then, this 1969, I feel like this trial of the Chicago 7 is really the trial of the American soul. And then we find ourselves in 2020, once again, where the country, especially in the months leading up to the election, felt like it was on trial again. And the way that this film, I think, elevates and holds up protest and dissent as a patriotic act, I would like to think that is something that the film imparts to the viewer, and that is impactful.
And that action can actually wreak change.
That's right. Yeah.
I agree with Jeremy, and I think he's right, or I at least hope that he is. And I think especially the last thing that the two of you said, I think that by showing these protesters as heroes, which they were, I do think it inspires young people, a generation that you can tell is chomping at the bit for change, and to be the ones to activate that change.
I know you're all busy. We could go on, but thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. Anytime. It's great to see you. It's great to see you, Jeremy.
Great to see you, Aaron.